added an 11,000 BTU air conditioner to where the old fan was in the bedroom on a 29.3. A couple things here. I had to trim these ceiling splines, just used a utility knife, pretty soft. And I had to move this light fixture. It was over here, and I had to move it forward enough to get the grill on. And there's a notch for the wiring that if you look real close up in there, you can see where the wiring passes through. But pretty much concealed. You'd have to really know what you're looking for to find it. The wiring, there's the existing wiring for the fan, 12-volt wiring, runs in a channel or a chase. I'm not sure what it is, but it's a gap of some kind. That's where the wire ran. And I fished a piece of baling wire from the cabinet this way, and I'm sorry, from this way to the cabinet, hooked the wire on and pulled it back, so I only had to pull that little short distance. That was hard, extremely hard. I used 10 gauge wire, which is overkill. Air conditioning only requires 15 amps. Smaller wire would have helped. Now if I get back in the cabinet here, what I did was the cable comes out of that chase right up in here, right behind the face frame between the two cabinet doors. And I added a piece of loom in here, and then went to this raceway that I bought at Lowe's. It has a track that you attach, and then a cap that snaps over it. I ran that chase, or that raceway, all the way down, made the turn, went down to the bottom of the cabinet, went through the cabinet, from up there down through here, and started another piece of this raceway down, painted it brown, and dropped it through the top. So this is the ugliest part of it right here, but I've gotten used to it, and it doesn't bother me at all. Went down through the cabinet. I'll see if I can show you that here. It might be tough to get in there and see it, but I picked up that raceway again and ran it down through the floor of the cabinet, and I replaced the floor of the cabinet with a piece of paneling. I just pulled it up with a screwdriver, the old one, and it's just stapled in. Ran the wire across, then drilled through this partition, and brought the wire out under the bed. There's the water tank under the bed. That's that orange cable I ran, like I said, 10 gauge wire, and ran it over to this junction box. Has two 30 amp double pole contactors in it, and from one contactor I ran a 10 gauge wire down, I probably can't see it, but back into the distribution panel down here, and added a 15 amp breaker, which is all the 11K requires, power saver requires. So this, depending on this toggle switch I installed here, flipped down, it takes power from this breaker. Flipped up, it actuates the other contactor, which runs off this 10 gauge extension cord that I ran out to plug outside. I'll show you that in a minute. So that I can plug, depending on that switch position, I can plug it in, run it off of external power, off of pedestal, or off of the generator or distribution panel, whichever you want to run it off of. This switch is just 12 volts, double pole, double throw, to allow me to choose which contactor. Now, all of that's probably not necessary. You could just put a double pole, double throw switch in and just switch it. If you do it with the power off and the air conditioner not running, it should be fine. The contactor is a little bit of a safety factor in my mind, but probably not necessary. A lot of people just run the power wire straight out to a plug and don't do any of this switching or this breaker stuff. But this does allow you to run it off the generator if you choose. Up on top, let's see, I'll go back and show you one of the questions I had was how to get into this wall. I tried to get into it One of the other posters was able to do it and run their wire down internal to this wall, so it saved all this ugly stuff here. I tried it and I ended up with a rat chew hole up here in my cabinet, so I put a metal plate over it, and unfortunately my wife stuffs this with linen so we don't ever see it. And you may have noticed that when we were down in there, I had 2 blank plate covers. Down at the bottom there's a round one there, and on the other side of that base cabinet there's a 2x4 one there. That's just to cover holes I may well run in the wire, but not an issue for me as I never see them. I don't think I've ever put anything in that cabinet down there. Here's the receptacle I installed. Got it off Amazon, I believe. It just takes a standard plug. I also bought a 10 gauge 30 amp standard receptacle extension cord on Amazon that I use for this. The reason I used 10 wire on everything was not due to amperage requirements. I just want to try and reduce voltage drop. I also put a hard start kit in the 11K and the 15K stock unit air conditioners to help that start surge. Don't know if that was necessary. I was just doing whatever I could to reduce it. Some people, the ones that did not put the contactors in or hook up to their generator, put another one of these 30 amp plugs here and ran the wire directly to this plug. Well, not directly, they ran it to a 2 breaker box, and then from there to here, so that they had a breaker that controlled the power running into the AC, and also gave them a little extra protection. One of the comments they made on that was make sure you set that low enough so that if this lid is up, the slide up here when it closes does not contact the lid. I guess some of them installed it up here so that when the lid was flipped up, and they installed it up here, so when the lid was flipped up and the slide was retracted, it pinched this lid. Just a little tip if you're going to do it that way.